Hey guys, Buster here. Cancel games are nothing new. Hundreds of games are teased each and every year, and eventually end up not happening. However, I argue there is no cancelled game with such an infamous backstory like Sonic X-Treme. That can be confused with Sonic X-Treme, which was also cancelled, but it's not nearly as interesting story-wise. The Sonic X-Treme tale is an incredible story, full of tight deadlines, people risking their lives, and inevitable failure as a result of it all, with Sega being their own worst enemy. The development started in late 1994, with a designer and CGI artist game named Chris Sen and a few other Sega employees doing designs for what was planned to be an exclusive Sonic game for the ill-fated add-on, the Sega 32X. However, the funny thing is that at the time, the add-on wasn't even released, and they didn't even really know what it was capable of. Eventually, they started developing the game itself, and it was called Sonic Mars. However, suddenly Kosaka, who was one of the designers for this game, redesigned due to them not getting along with the executive producer named Dean Lester, and also talked about how the office was a politically unhealthy environment. Funny enough, Dean would also be resigned shortly after, with those two employees being replaced and making changes. Eventually, due to the 30X underperforming, the development was later shifted to be located on the Sega Saturn, which, funny enough, at the time was also not doing too well, which caused the team a few weeks of development because of having to force it to work with the Sega Saturn. Now, just to set the scene of how truly bad the development was, Yuji Naka, who worked at Sega at the time, looked at the state of the development in the strict October 1996 deadline and said, "Good luck." At this point, the development was split into two teams, one team taking care of the boss fights and the other taking care of the main levels. And weirdly, they were developing the game using different engines. After a few fights between developers and some other minor troubles trying to get Sonic's 2D play space into a 3D space, in March 1996, some of STS's Japanese workers would try and see how development was going in the American department. Safe to say, they were not impressed. Frame rates were low, with one developer was angry to the point where they started cussing them out. Yeah, that's the appropriate way to react. To add insult to injury, Sen tried to show them the latest version of PC build, which is apparently a lot more polished. However, they left before he could do so. However, despite all this, one of the visitors was impressed by the use of Coffin's boss engine, and therefore requested that the game should restart development to take advantage of it. Also, Chris Coffin is a programmer for the game I probably should have mentioned earlier. Coffin's team would move into a small SCI location with 4 artists, 2 programmers, a contractor, and 3 designers, and they were all working for around 16 to 20 hours per day, with some of them moving directly into the office. If that is not dedication, I don't know what is. But the worst part still hasn't come in yet. In April, Bernie Stoller would approach SCI and give the source code for Nights into Dreams, which was another Saturn game made by Sonic Team earlier in the year, to try and speed up the development process. However, a few weeks later, he requested they stop using the engine due to Naka allegedly threatening to leave Sega if it were used. Now, this was never elaborated in terms of why, but later on in 2022, Naka said this was not true because the games were made in 2 different engines, and they invented the story to excuse the game's failure. Whether or not this story is true, the fact was the development was in a very rough spot. Now, in E3 1996, there was a playable demo of Sonic X-Treme, however, unfortunately at the expense of the developers' well-being, with Coffin ironically getting a severe case of walking pneumonia, and Sen being ill to the point where he was told he had 6 months to live, though he would end up surviving. Due to how both of these teams were in a very bad state, the game would be delayed to early 1997 before eventually getting cancelled. However, Sega made up for this with 3 3D Sonic games. Try saying that 10 times fast. Sonic 3D Blast, which was just a port of a Genesis game. Sonic R, which is a very jank racing game, which somehow had fairly decent reviews back in the day. And lastly, Sonic Jam, which was just a compilation of the first 4 classic Sonic games. Now, none of these games are terrible, but when you put into context some of Nintendo's exclusives, yeah, I probably don't need to explain why this is an issue. Not much later after X-Treme's cancellation, SCI would be shut down, and in my research there was apparently supposed to be a live-action animated film based on Sonic X-Treme. I also guess while I'm at it, I should talk about my opinions on the game via the prototypes, and if I think this game would ever be good if it was released. And honestly, I'm kinda mixed about it. Now granted, all these prototypes were tons of bugs and not much to do, but honestly I feel like Sonic is just not very comfortable in this environment they put him in. Not that all 3D Sonic games are bad. I did enjoy my time with Frontiers and Generations. I just think it's the claustrophobic areas and some of these extreme areas that don't feel well to explore. Well, thank you guys for watching this video. This is definitely a wild ride to research. If you like what you saw and want to support the channel, Liking, subscribing, and commenting helps a lot. If you had some money you want to throw at me, I have a Patreon where for $1 a month you get early access to videos. For $3 a month will earn an exclusive short video, and this week I am reviewing Sonic the Fighters. And for $5 a month, it will earn you some BTS videos, which I'm honestly not sure how much I will make if I'm being honest. With all that said, this was Buster, and I'll see you guys next time.